revealed the amazing truth behind her silence that transformed their lives forever in 30 moments. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, her fingers coiling tightly around the frayed comforter, uncertain if she should leap into the day ahead or remain cocooned in the remnants of a life she barely recognized. The chaos of raising two spirited children, Lily and Jake, on her own while working two exhausting jobs loomed like an insurmountable mountain. Each morning, the bills piled higher, a relentless spiral that suffocated the vibrant dreams she had forgotten. The smell of paint, the feel of a brush gliding over canvas. Her dreams had dulled, extinguished after the tragic loss of her mother left her grappling with grief and guilt. She found herself existing rather than living, moving through her days on autopilot, haunted by the silence that enveloped her. With a deep breath, she slipped into her faded work uniform and forced herself to face the outside world, where judgment hung in the air like an uninvited guest. She had become the subject of whispered gossip, a single mother struggling to keep her family afloat, a haunting reminder of what could go wrong. The weight of expectation suffocated her. The nagging fear that she was failing her children gnawed at her with every judgmental glance. Were they aware of the art that had once flowed so vibrantly through her veins? Those moments of creativity felt like distant echoes. They lingered, yet she had buried them deep, lying beneath the rubble of life's relentless demands. That as dusk descended, she found herself in the attic, a dimly lit refuge layered in dust. It was a place she had avoided due to the painful memories, yet here, tangled among memories, she unearthed the remnants of her mother's past, a collection of forgotten canvases and brushes. Eyes misting with unshed tears, Sarah hesitated. Could she? After years of denying her passion, might she reclaim an intimate connection to her mother through art? She picked up a brush, her hand trembling, the moment imbued with both fear and longing. Each stroke was a tentative release, colors emerging like whispered secrets begging to be recognized. That a few days later, Tom, her best friend and unwavering supporter, stumbled upon her early attempts, scattered yet raw. His eyes sparkled with admiration, igniting a dormant flame within her. "You've got to show the world this," he urged, but the words hung in the air like a challenge, igniting her internal fears. What if they dismissed her? What if they ridiculed her as she feared, just another struggling artist? As she prepared to submit her work to the local exhibition, a pit of dread formed in her stomach, tightening with the knowledge that her socioeconomic status would paint her as unworthy in the eyes of the art elite. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. When she faced the gallery owner, his disdain was palpable, dripping with classist contempt, shattering her fragile confidence like glass. But even as the words cut deep, an ember of resolve flared within her, though it twisted with the anguish of feeling perpetually unseen. This wasn't just about her art anymore. It was about every overlooked soul asleep in a town that had turned its back on them. Just then, Jake clumsily fumbled a family heirloom, her mother's ancient paintbrush, the one that had touched generations of dreams, and Sarah felt the air in her lungs constrict. Memories surged. Generational hardships whispered through her, and as despair churned within, Sarah's heart raced. Would she embrace her voice or let this moment slip through her fingers just as so much had before? The answer hung in the air, heavy with unyielding tension, promising change, yet terrifying in its uncertainty, leaving Sarah at the precipice of reclaiming both her artistry and her legacy. Sarah stood frozen in the attic, brushing her fingers over the paintbrush that had belonged to her mother. It felt like a lifeline tossed into turbulent waters. With each breath, she oscillated between nostalgia and fear, realizing she had a choice to make, one that extended beyond the canvas and shattered societal expectations. Was she prepared to confront not just herself but the judgment of those around her? That night, as the kids slept, Sarah pondered not just the exhibition but what it meant to truly express herself. She looked at the mess of paints and canvases, feeling a stirring inside, urging her to recommit to a part of herself she had long neglected. Thoughts of who she might become filled her mind: a creator, a mother, a visionary. Yet, doubt still lingered, feeding into her insecurities. The criticism from the gallery owner echoed in her head, compelling an internal dialogue that gnawed at her resolve. Who was Sarah without the approval of others? The following day, while the kids played outside, she set up a makeshift studio in the attic, sunlight streaming through the small window, illuminating the dust motes swirling like the swirling chaos in her mind. The first stroke felt foreign, awkward, unsteady, but as she let herself lean into the act of painting, a clarity began to emerge. The colors on the canvas danced, vibrant and defiant, a direct contrast to the muted tones of her daily routine. Sarah realized that for the first time in years, each brushstroke was not just movement, but a declaration of existence, a revolution against her self-imposed silence. Days turned into weeks as she painted, each canvas revealing layers of her emotions: grief, anger, joy. Morning anxiety transformed into afternoon fulfillment. The children often peeked in, eyes wide with curiosity, and for the first time, she began to explain her process, inviting them into the world she had created. Their laughter and unexpected inquiries breathed fresh air into her art, urging her to let go of the past, while forging new interpretations of her experience. As the deadline for the exhibition approached, however, her apprehensions resurfaced. The mixed emotions swirling inside felt like a tug-of-war. Was she truly ready to expose her soul to the harsh light of scrutiny? The idea of standing before critics, potential patrons, and even peers filled her with dread. What if they only saw the fragments of her poverty, the remnants of resignation? On a particularly arduous evening, she reached for the paintbrush again and felt the sheen of the bristles against her skin. Instead of fear, she embraced the feeling. It was a connection to her mother, to herself. What she was learning transcended mere artistic endeavor. This was a reclamation of voice, a bold stand against the narratives others had imposed upon her. Driven by newfound strength, she thought of the children's futures. Perhaps her art could inspire them to challenge their fears and advocate for their dreams. This ambition sparked a determination that overshadowed the voices of doubt. They deserved to see their mother embracing life, standing resiliently against barriers like those her own inherited dreams had faced. The day before the exhibition, with canvases stacked precariously in her car, Sarah hesitated outside the gallery doors. Doubt flared threateningly, but she took a deep breath. She was more than just a statistic, a struggling single mother. She was a storyteller through art, ready to unveil her truth. It was time to break the silence, to expose her journey to the world and claim her space in it once more. The moment had come to face not just the critics, but the very essence of who she had become. As she stepped inside, heart pounding, ready to set free the stories woven into every brushstroke, a chill danced down her spine. Was she truly prepared to unveil her vulnerabilities for all to see? As the gallery doors swung closed behind her, Sarah felt an overwhelming wave of warmth engulf her. The space was alive with energy, a montage of colors and textures from fellow artists, each piece boldly asserting its existence just as she yearned to do. Yet her heart raced, heavy with the weight of expectation. Being surrounded by so much creativity only intensified her self-doubt, turning her excitement into anxiety. The gallery owner, a sharp-eyed man named Richard, approached her with an outstretched hand. "You've got quite the collection here, Sarah," he said, his smile a calculated veneer. "But tell me, what are you hoping to convey?" She hesitated, the question laced with an expectation she felt wholly unprepared to meet. Scrambling to find the words, she realized she'd never given her art a narrative beyond her inner tumult. Hers was a story woven in brushstrokes, not spoken dialogue. Richard's question lit a spark, pushing her to confront what lay beneath the color and texture. "Freedom," she finally admitted. "Freedom to express myself beyond what others expect from me." The admission tumbled from her lips, charged with the weight of suppressed truths. As she spoke, she saw in his eyes the flicker of recognition. It was as if he understood the battle she had fought to take this leap. But self-doubt lingered faintly in her mind. How could a single word encapsulate the complex tapestry of emotions she had poured onto canvas? A lump formed in her throat. The fear of trivializing her journey gnawed at her resolve. As guests began to flood in, Sarah's painted canvases began to speak for her. Each jarring stroke echoed themes of conflict, resilience, and ultimately, self-liberation. Her paintings embodied fragments of her life, vivid representations of heartache juxtaposed against vibrant bursts of joy, the intricacies of motherhood intertwined with her own dreams. Watching people engage with her art sparked a transformative realization. They were truly experiencing her journey, much as she had intended. Their reactions evoked wonder and validation. Conversations started to blossom around her creations, giving her a new sense of agency, a bold push against the quiet narratives that had once defined her life. Yet within the thrill of the moment lingered the question she dodged: what would happen when the applause faded? Would the very courage she had mustered hold firm in the face of harsher scrutiny? Hours slid by, and amidst conversations and delight, a troubling figure emerged in the crowd. It was her old friend Mia, the one who had unknowingly set her spiraling into doubt years ago with hollow compliments and subtle jabs at Sarah's aspirations. Mia approached, feigning enthusiasm. "Wow, Sarah, I didn't know you still painted. It's different. Brave of you to show it." But Sarah felt the underlying criticism in her tone like a suffocating shroud. The moment snapped her focus. Instead of retreating into the shadows, a wave of determination surged within her. This was the very encounter she had both dreaded and desired: confrontation around the vulnerability she had spent weeks exploring. Her identity was not tied to the opinions of others. It belonged to the essence of her art that resonated with her truth. "I've changed, Mia," she replied, meeting her gaze with newfound strength. "I'm owning my voice now." Mia's expression shifted, her mask slipping, revealing the surprise etched on her features. Sarah felt an odd sense of satisfaction, profound yet unsettling, as more guests watched the exchange unfold. As the night continued, Sarah found herself captivated by how her art had drawn a boundary. It wasn't just a display of her past. It was a basis for future growth and resilience. Stepping away from the crowd momentarily, she contemplated further. Was her newfound strength solely tied to her art, or did it reflect a larger shift in her understanding of worth? Just then, Richard called out, "Let us get everyone together for a group photo with the artists." Sarah glanced around the gallery, heart racing anew. A part of her felt unworthy, almost like an imposter amidst the talent surrounding her. Yet, another part, the artist, the mother, the defiant spirit, yearned to step into the light, to embrace the fullness of who she had become. She joined the other artists, instinctively standing taller. The camera would capture this moment, a vulnerable woman boldly carving her place in the world. But as she reveled in the validation, an unsettling realization crept in. What lurked behind the curtain of success? With one click of the camera capturing the moment, she was left pondering the work ahead. The exhibition was only a beginning. Deeper layers of her story awaited discovery. What revelations lay ahead as she stepped deeper into her identity as both artist and mother? The energy of the gallery lingered in Sarah's veins as she stepped away from the crowd. She could still feel the warmth of the spotlight, even as the chatter of guests began to fade into the nocturnal hum of the city outside. Lives had intersected in that moment of exposure, and what was supposed to simply be a series of paintings had morphed into a canvas of human interaction, each figure in the crowd a part of her evolving narrative. Her heart thudded, every beat hammering home a solemn reminder of her fragility, the rawness of the vulnerability she had just exposed. The lingering presence of Mia echoed in her mind, a reminder that scrutiny was often wrapped in the guise of friendship. Was Mia's lingering criticism a reflection of her own struggle against insecurity? Had creating art inadvertently turned the lens inward, thrusting their past dynamics into sharp relief? An unexpected shift had begun within her, igniting questions about who she had been, who she was transforming into, and, more importantly, what this would mean for her future. Art had provided a means of expression, yet it was the engagement with her audience that truly unveiled the layers of her identity. Words were no longer needed. Each canvas articulated the complexities of her journey, inviting connection and reflection. That Richard's earlier question haunted her. What are you hoping to convey? This spoken dilemma lay at the heart of her artistic endeavor and now pushed her to delve deeper into her own psyche. What narratives had she suppressed? What truths remained unpainted on the canvas of her life? Moving off to a quiet corner of the gallery, she hitched her breath to collect her scattered thoughts. The trio of contemplative canvases she had displayed the vibrant reds of passion, soft blues of melancholy, and fiery oranges of determination whispered stories to her anew. Each stroke was a section of her life, yet the question still nagged at her. Was any one piece a true reflection of her voice? Behind her eyes flickered shadows of doubt. She had gone public as an artist, but was she confronting herself in a way that warranted the risks taken? Did her paintings truly encapsulate her experience as a mother? Could they embody the dichotomy of nurturing and yearning for self? The air felt heavy, an oppressive reminder of her responsibility to honor every facet of herself. With newfound resolve, Sarah drew out a notebook stashed in her purse, an impulse she hadn't acted on in years. Begin again, she reminded herself, as she began to jot down her thoughts, channeling the raw energy of the event. The page became a dialogue illuminated by memories, intertwining moments where maternal love collided with the pursuit of artistic truth. The process was cathartic, and with each word, she recognized a fluctuating rhythm, an ebb and flow guiding her dual identities. But the ink looked faintly like the chaos of her emotions, and she contemplated transferring those sentiments to the canvas. She could push boundaries further than she'd anticipated, and by laying herself bare, she could invite others to be liberated too. Suddenly, the gallery was faced with more than just aesthetics. It was now a dynamic space that summoned not only artistic autonomy, but also emotional healing. The interactions were not solely dependent on the reception of her work. They were entwined with the relentless dialogue of her own evolution as both artist and mother. She could feel the tug of wanting to share this realization with others, to unveil deeper layers yet to be explored. But could she articulate this newfound clarity? Could she transform the rawness of her artistic voice into a message that resonated not just as a statement, but as an invitation to others to embark on their own journeys? As the last guests filtered out and the gallery began to quiet, Sarah made a decision. She needed to dive headlong into this duality of her identity, embracing the mother who nurtured her children and the artist who carved out space for herself. Yet, standing at this crossroad ignited a deeper question. What would she ultimately risk in pursuit of this harmony, her comfort, her relationships, her very sense of self? With determination pooling within, she realized the next chapter of her life demanded boldness and exploration. What awaited her as she chose to confront this uncertainty head-on? As the gallery lights dimmed, one singular thought crystallized with clarity. The true unveiling of her journey had just begun. What hidden revelations lurked within the artistry that remained unexplored? The city outside felt alive, contrasting with the suspended silence that enveloped Sarah as she sat in the dim gallery. The soft hum of distant traffic served as a reminder of life, continuing while she remained still, caught in an opportunity for introspection. As she turned her notebook pages, she felt the ink beneath her fingertips constricting her thoughts. To pour everything onto the canvas would mean unraveling more than artwork. It required a confrontation with herself. What did she want to say? This question loomed larger than any physical brushstroke. Each minute detail, from the way her children's laughter echoed in her memories to the silent struggles with insecurity, became a crucial element in the fabric of her narrative. Digging deeper, she sought to define the emotions that her canvases seemed to grasp, but not fully articulate. She had exposed her vulnerabilities to an audience, but now it was time to embrace the whole spectrum of her truth. That yearning forced her back to the moments she had tucked away, the nights spent pondering motherhood while her daughter danced in the living room, the quiet storms of frustration that bloomed in her studio when creativity seemed just out of reach. A full title danced in her mind, skirting around the edges of her daydreams, the space between art and life. The theme emerged vividly. The gaps where she felt most disconnected were also the spaces begging to be filled. That a renewed pulse of creativity surged within her. Sarah clenched the notebook to her chest and considered the power of a fresh canvas. She rose abruptly, swallowed the last dregs of trepidation, and stepped out into the night. The cool air hit her face, invigorating and harsh, carrying the weight of her intentions. It was not just art she needed to produce, but an embodiment of self-acceptance intertwined with her identity as a mother and a creator. Beneath the streetlights, shadows played tricks on her mind. She envisioned her studio a sanctuary and battleground alike, awaiting the transformation that was unfolding within her. The brushes lined up like soldiers ready for her command. She had to come to terms with the fear of producing something not immediately perfect, something that resonated deeper than the applause of gallery-goers. The risk was twofold. By laying her rawness bare, she opened the door for intimate exploration. But was she ready to confront the echoes of criticism that could follow? Uneasiness twisted in her gut, yet it was threaded with hope, a duality she had grown used to balancing. Within this unrest simmered a determination to redefine herself not just through her relationship with her art, but through a profound sense of self-honesty. She tapped the pages of her notebook, writing more feverishly as the feelings roared through her. The decision crystallized into a singular mantra. She would create not just for validation, but to unearth her truths, to break free from the calluses of her past. With each word crafted under the soft lamplight in her apartment, she felt something tug at the edges of her mind, a flicker of self that yearned to leap forth. There lay the possibility of an exhibition focused on the core of her identity, where vulnerability transformed into empowerment. But as she mapped her emotional landscape, a new concern surfaced. How would her children perceive her once she began this deeper journey? Would they understand this expansion, or would they perceive it as a flight from her existing obligations? These queries clouded her mind as she sought to strike a balance. The thought of standing in front of an audience again, bearing truths that melded her roles, ignited a fire within her, an expression of liberation waiting just beyond the horizon. Facing her reflection in the window, the resolve grew resolute. She was both mother and artist, and it was time for the world to see the depth of that duality. Yet as her excitement propelled her ideas forward, one lingering question remained. Would the pursuit of this truth redefine not only her art, but the very essence of her relationships? Sarah stared out into the night, scorched with anticipation of what lay ahead. The next phase of her exploration beckoned, its shadows flickering with promise and danger alike. In this tension, she sensed the beginning of a life-changing conversation, a dialogue yet to be written on the canvas of her existence. What would it bring forth, and who would be standing with her as she embraced it? As she stepped into her studio, the world outside faded into a distant hum. The room, with its familiar chaos of paints and half-finished canvases, felt alive in a different way. It was a sacred space filled with the echoes of her creative struggles and triumphs. Sarah set her notebook on the cluttered table, its pages steeped in her newfound resolve. The air was thick with potential, and she inhaled deeply, ready to dive into this uncharted territory of her identity. The first stroke on the blank canvas was tentative, her brush shaking as if reflecting her inner turmoil. Over the past weeks, she had built a foundation of emotional rawness, but translating that emotion into visual form was another challenge entirely. She dipped her brush into vibrant hues, colors that seemed to pulse with life, and pressed it against the canvas. One stroke, then another. It was exhilarating, yet terrifying as the familiar whisper of self-doubt crept in, threatening to still her hand. What if this didn't come out as she envisioned? What if others ridiculed her attempts upon seeing her truth laid bare? Sarah had been here before, but this time felt different. She was no longer painting for the audience or for fleeting accolades. Each brushstroke felt like a reflection of her journey, a bared vulnerability that demanded authenticity. With this realization pinned in her heart, she pushed through the fear and allowed her emotions to flow freely onto the canvas. Hours passed unnoticed as she lost herself in the work. Shapes emerged from the chaos, intertwining figures that represented her roles as a mother and an artist, a dance between self-acceptance and expectation. Splotches of colors hinted at chaos, yet intertwined with beauty much like her life. This new piece, she decided, would be the centerpiece of her upcoming exhibition, where she would bridge her art with her personal narrative. Yet, even as she immersed in this process, another layer of anxiety threaded into her thoughts. The looming potential impact on her children filled her with ambivalence. Would they comprehend the magnitude of her journey? Would they see her struggles as enthralling pillars of strength or selfish pursuits that diverted her attention from them? From her brushes to palette knives, she wrestled with each stroke as doubts flickered in and out of focus. Later that night, the canvas stood before her, a testament to her immersion into both art and motherhood, but also her deep-seated fears. She stepped back and observed, searching for the nuances hidden within. The figures seemed to breathe. They captured the moments of laughter with her children, the unspoken anxieties during sleepless nights, the serenity amid chaos. Yet, the nagging worry loomed larger, the concern intertwined with love for her family. A pivotal moment aggregated in her heart, the realization that she would have to invite them into her process, not as spectators, but as participants. The following day, with her heart racing, she gathered her children around a fresh canvas in the living room. "I want to show you something," she announced, their curious expressions encouraging her to continue. She explained how art flowed from feelings and experiences and what it meant for her to paint her truths. Their faces were a mixture of understanding and exploration, yet uncertainty flickered in their eyes. Would sharing this vulnerable side bring them closer together or create an invisible chasm filled with misinterpretation? Their engagement with her creativity became a delicate balance. They began to emulate her in their own artistic expressions, filling her space with laughter and earnest attempts at capturing their joys. As Sarah watched them find their voices in colors and forms, a profound realization wrapped around her. Perhaps embracing her vulnerabilities would, in fact, create a conduit to deeper connections, an invitation for them to understand the multifaceted identity of their mother artist, creator, and human being. But as she stood before the evolving artwork, the harmony of their creation sparked another question. Could this newfound openness ultimately redefine their familial bond? Would her art serve merely as a reflection of her life? Or could it become the bridge that brought them together? With her children at her feet, immersed in creativity, Sarah couldn't help but feel both anxious and excited. The journey towards self-revelation had only just begun, and the canvas before her glowed with unspoken possibilities. As she contemplated the next steps, one thought echoed loudly. What awaited her when she unveiled this new chapter of her identity to the outside world? The anticipation spiraled within her, igniting an unreachable flicker of hope. Each day in the studio became a testament to her growth, a woven tapestry of personal and artistic awakening. With her children now part of her creative process, Sarah began to see how the simple act of painting could be a shared experience, a legacy that could bridge generational divides. The laughter and the mess of their artistic endeavors brought a sense of rejuvenation to her spirit, and as they played with colors and forms, she marveled at the beauty of their uninhibited expression. But beneath the surface of joy, a tension lingered. Each moment of shared creativity carried its weight. She felt the tug of expectations. Did her children see her as a painter, or simply as their mother? The subtle shifts in their demeanor hinted at an unspoken pressure. Would her artistic journey overshadow their own unique pursuits? Would they feel compelled to follow her path, sacrificing their authenticity at the altar of her ambitions? One evening, after a particularly chaotic yet vibrant painting session, Sarah watched as her youngest son layered colors, eyes narrowed in concentration. She paused, clinging to her brush, aware that she had unintentionally placed her dreams onto their canvases. It was a crucial realization that propelled her to address the elephant in the room. "What do you want to create?" she asked gently. The question hung in the air, provocatively simple, yet deeply profound. Their responses opened a dialogue that transformed her approach. Instead of leading the artistic charge, she began to step back, merely guiding them through exploration rather than directing their creativity. This shift felt both liberating and terrifying. Would she lose the connection that had blossomed through shared expression? In the weeks that followed, Sarah noticed a palpable change in her children's demeanor. Their art became an authentic extension of themselves, vibrant and alive, no longer shadows of her influence. Yet, uncertainty crept back, and would unveiling her own work jeopardize this newfound dynamic? The upcoming exhibition loomed over her like a dark cloud, filled with the threat of judgment. Just as she began contemplating withdrawing her participation, a conversation with a fellow artist stirred something within her. "Art is about vulnerability. The audience wants to see the truth," her friend had said. The words echoed in her mind, growing louder as the exhibition date approached. Did she have the courage to reveal not only her art, but the intricate emotions behind it? As the day drew nearer, she became consumed by a mixture of fear, excitement, and utter vulnerability. The canvas at home, with its layered images of motherhood, chaos, and love, stood as a metaphor for her own journey. Each brushstroke was a personal testimony, a revelation that needed to be shared. Yet, the thought of exposing those intimate parts of herself to the world, her truths liable to be scrutinized, dissected, and even misinterpreted, threatened to paralyze her. What if they didn't understand her story? What if they judged her actions and the implications for her family? Standing before her canvas, she grappled with these conflicting emotions, her finger hovering just above the surface of a brush. Sarah's internal battle escalated. She had the chance to be her true self in front of an audience, but at what cost? The questions piled onto each other, intensifying with every heartbeat. Was she ready to confront these fears? Would revealing her truth set them free or bind her family closer in the shared recognition of vulnerability? The moment hung heavy in the air as she reached for her brush, ready to lay bare her greatest fears. What she didn't realize was that in taking this step, she was at one of life's pivotal crossroads, the moment where authenticity meets exposure. As she began to paint, laced with both hesitation and resolve, one thought embedded itself deeply in her mind. What would become of her family if her art shattered the silence they had been wrapped in? With each stroke of the brush, Sarah felt both relief and trepidation wash over her. The colors mixed on the canvas in a riot of emotions, mirroring the complexities of her journey through motherhood and artistry. She poured out the chaos of family life, the heartfelt moments, and the unspoken burdens she carried, all reflected back at her in vibrant hues. Yet, as the paint dried, a louder voice emerged in her mind. Would this canvas define her, or would she define what the canvas represented? The night hours stretched on as she transformed her emotional turmoil into a tangible representation of her struggles and triumphs. The act of creation was cathartic, yet it wasn't just the art that mattered. It was the story behind it that haunted her. To be seen, truly seen, was terrifying. She wondered if revealing her imperfections might open unexpected wounds, or perhaps bridge the gap between her family's lives and her artistic identity. Inwardly wrestling with her decision to showcase this labor of love, her thoughts spiraled. If she unveiled the truth of her experiences, would it empower her children to express their own vulnerabilities, or would they recoil from the very example she set? What would happen when they were faced with their own identities being compared to hers? The stakes, she realized, were high. The next day, while her children were engrossed in their artwork, she watched carefully. Their laughter was infectious, but in the back of her mind lurked questions. Would they feel suffocated by my narrative? She wondered. Drawing from their carefree spirit, she envisioned how they might react to her exhibition. Perhaps they would admire her bravery, or perhaps they would feel overshadowed, an outcome she couldn't bear. Motivated by uncertainty, Sarah decided to include her children in her creative process. With a blank canvas before them, she posed an idea. "Let us create something together," she suggested with a hopeful tone. They exchanged curious looks before rallying their creative energy. Past fears momentarily set aside in the promise of collaboration, as colors splashed onto the canvas. A sense of unity enveloped them. With each collective stroke and giggle, her children began to shape their responses to her questions, a gentle guidance rather than a directive. She observed the way they tackled challenges, responding with resilience and curiosity that ignited a sense of pride in her. It became evident to her that her fears that her artistic journey might eclipse theirs were unfounded. With each shared moment, they communicated the importance of individual expression and strengthened their familial bonds. Subsequently, an unexpected truth emerged. Her art did not only belong to her. It could serve as a testament to their shared experiences, reflections of collective love and support. Perhaps the pressures she felt were also opportunities for growth. The exhibition could reveal not just her struggles, but highlight the richness of their shared journey. Emboldened by this realization, Sarah leaned into her vulnerability rather than retreat. She began crafting a narrative to accompany her artwork, bridging her emotional landscape with relatable stories from her family's collective life. Her canvas could be an exploration of love, chaos, and identity, a safe space for her children to declare their truths alongside hers. But as the days sped towards the exhibition, doubts continued to gnaw at her. Emerging questions began to surface. Were they ready to embrace those intertwined narratives publicly? The thoughts tangled in her head, battling against her growing resolve. What if her vulnerability fueled a misunderstanding instead of connection? By nightfall, standing before her evolving masterpiece, a wave of determination surged within her. The canvas now told a broader story, one that encompassed not just her fears, but the potential joys of unity and strength among family. Yet deep down, the situation loomed ahead like a great horizon. She could feel the impending uncertainty of that exhibition date looming like a storm cloud. With one last glance at the swirling colors beneath her fingertips, she whispered to herself, "It's time to shed the silence." The thought echoed as she set down her brush, an unyielding question lingering in her mind. What will be the outcome of this transformative unveiling? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow across her studio, Sarah stood frozen before her canvas, caught in a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Each brushstroke echoed a question, a fear, a hope. What if the world rejected her truth? What if her family did not receive the story she aimed to share as she intended? The weight of her decisions felt heavier now, more defining than ever. Over the next few days, her mind spun like an uncontained brush, painting scenarios both vibrant and grim as she endeavored to prepare for the impending exhibition. Each time she tried to focus on the narrative she sought to convey, self-doubt crept in, whispering insidiously. She could hear the echoes of her own insecurities, dissecting her artwork with a brutal critique. What if no one connects? What if my children feel exposed or attacked? To push through this mental fog, Sarah turned back to her kids, engaging them not just in collaborative art, but in candid conversations. She set aside fears of creating a burden and asked them directly, "How does art make you feel?" Their answers, teeming with childlike sincerity, transcribed the heartbeat of their familial bond. "It makes me happy," her eldest admitted. "It's like magic." Her youngest chimed in, the innocence bursting forth in every giggle. Suddenly, Sarah felt a shift within her. Their emotions, their joy, transformed something monumental. Art, she came to realize, was not only a window into her vulnerabilities, but rather a mirror reflecting the beauty of their shared experiences. With this new lens, the questions began to evolve. Instead of contemplating the repercussions of vulnerability, she began to ask, how can our truths intermingle to create understanding? Invigorated, she set aside her earlier doubts and sought to craft a story that represented their family as a unit rather than isolated individuals. A melange of colors, fears, ambitions, and laughter, she envisioned a series that could expose her children to the healing power of honesty. If she led by example, perhaps they could also step into the light of their own truths without fear of the dark shadows that lie in that kitchen-turned studio. With canvas and chaos, Sarah established an open dialogue. The air hummed with curiosity as she encouraged her children to share their feelings about the prospect of the exhibit. Initially tentative, they soon blossomed into articulate voices. "I think we should show how we feel," her son suggested. Sarah's heart swelled. How astute, how sincere. However, with each passing day, the duality of her excitement and nervousness escalated. Would her children truly be ready for this exposure? The idea of them being defined by her journey scared her more than it thrilled her. Sarah wrestled with a realization. She had to trust not only in her narrative, but also in their incredible capacity to navigate the vulnerabilities she exposed. As the exhibition date approached, she felt more like a tightrope walker poised above uncharted territory. Her mind cultivated a complex strategy. She would present the art, but also invite her children to share their stories firsthand. This would not be solely her moment. It was a shared celebration of growth and expression, etching their legacy on the canvas of life together. On the eve of her exhibition, Sarah found herself in contemplation, facing her masterpiece, which now bore the colors of fear and love intermingled. Every stroke felt like a beat of a heart anxious yet resilient. If this was to be a true unveiling, every heart involved needed to feel empowered, just as she did. Inhaling deeply, she whispered to herself the promise she hoped to keep. "This will not be a stage. It will be a space for every voice." But as the first rays of dawn cast light upon the horizon, an unexpected doubt clouded her mind. What if their truth resonated too closely with her own? The thought chilled her, pulling her back into that storm of uncertainty. And as she steeled herself for the unveiling, one truth emerged, tiny yet colossal. The moment of truth had arrived, and it could either bring their family closer together or cast shadows that would echo for a lifetime. The day of the exhibition dawned bright and promising, yet Sarah felt the familiar knot of anxiety twisting in her stomach. Today was not merely a showcase of her art. It was an unprecedented unveiling of her very essence, a collision of her identities as a mother and an artist. The air was thick with anticipation as she stared at her canvases, layered with stories of triumph and struggle. Each piece was an invitation for viewers to delve into the intimate chaos of her life. As guests began to arrive, Sarah felt adrenaline coursing through her veins. Dressed in a simple yet elegant tune of blue, a color that symbolized tranquility, she welcomed each person with a warm, steady smile. Her children stood by her side, united in purpose and spirit. They were her precious allies in this shared journey, ready to defend their mom's voice. The moment the gallery doors swung open, it marked the birth of a new narrative. People flowed in, their curious eyes drinking in the essence of each artwork. The colors spoke volumes, articulate representations of love interwoven with struggles and joy. Each canvas echoed a chapter of her life. Each beholder became a witness to a story that transcended individual experience and blossomed into collective empathy. As Sarah mingled, she engaged with the guests, revealing the heart behind her pieces. This piece represents my chaotic mornings with my children, the laughter echoing like vibrant palettes. And this one captures the weight of personal loss intertwined with motherly love. Her words flowed candidly, breezing past her earlier fears that had once paralyzed her. The conversations unfurled connections, threads of humanity spun from her compassion and openness. Then, it came time for her children to share their thoughts. Each took a deep breath, acceptance radiating between them. Standing in front of a gathered crowd, they openly discussed how their mom's art resonated with their own experiences. The eldest, Lily, spoke. Mom's paintings show that it's okay to feel sad or happy. When we paint together, we share our laughter and tears. With those words, a powerful wave of recognition swept through the audience. They were not just viewers but participants in a resonant connectivity. Amid the applause and affirmations that followed, Sarah felt an unexpected surge of pride swell within her. Their bravery transformed her moment of vulnerability into something profoundly shared, and she realized she had conquered both her internal barriers and the societal expectations that had sought to stifle her voice. The threads of fear that had once bound her unraveled, leaving in their wake a tapestry of empowerment. In that validating moment, Sarah crossed a threshold she had doubted she would ever reach. She had demonstrated to herself that art was not just the act of painting, but a vehicle of transformation. It was about lives intertwining through multiple perspectives: the artist, the mother, and the children, creating a montage of experiences that echoed across the community. The evening wound down, and the last guest departed with fond farewells. Sarah stood before her children, who radiated with joy. They were not just witnesses to a captivating exhibition, but significant characters in a story that stretched far beyond canvas and color. Each child, embodying confidence and newfound fervor, had learned to advocate for their own truths. With the night fading, Sarah's heart soared. She had reclaimed her artistry and, in doing so, transcended the silence that had shrouded her for too long. It was evident now that her growth was not merely professional, but intensely personal. She gazed at her children, feeling a solid confidence rooted in self-acceptance blossom within her. As she glanced around, eyes landing on the remnants of her exhibition, the brushes, the canvases, she saw not remnants of a struggle, but the foundation of endless possibilities. Today had marked a victory, a declaration that she would not only produce art, but continuously embody the essence of who she was meant to be. With a heart full of pride and a spirit renewed, Sarah resolved to forge ahead, embracing creativity as an ever-evolving journey that would kindle purpose and open dialogues within her family. This was only the beginning. Her path ahead shimmered with the promise of greater achievements intertwined with the love of her children. It was time to paint anew, to celebrate the uncharted canvases of life awaiting vibrant strokes of experience. And now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support, and leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Join us in the journey of transformation and be part of the magic.